Stranger Things shows a lot of fucked up experiments being done to kids to bring about their psychic abilities. The problem is, experimentation like that actually happened, and it wasn't a conspiracy theory. In earlier videos, I talked about Dr. Andrea Puharish, the military doctor who had his dick in just about every New Age and metaphysical group from the 50s onwards. You can't swing a dead cat without hitting something Puharish was influencing in some way. One of those things was experimentation, really insidious experimentation that was being done on children. Hypnosis, psychic driving, and things to make them supposedly develop their psychic ability, but which was really fucking them up. This all started at Puharish's lab, which he called the Round Table Foundation, which was established at a military facility that was said to have been given to him by the Navy. It's a 5,000 square foot fortified storage facility in Maine. Then, somehow or another, he just moved into a 50-room mansion on the coast that was bought for him, supposedly, by the heiress of the Astor fortune, John Jacob Astor's daughter. And this is where he started testing on kids. I have an article here called When a Shadowy Maine Estate Was an Epicenter of Psychics and Psychedelics by Andy O'Brien. It's from one of the local papers in Maine, and it goes through some of the history of this facility. Puharish's more arcane research, meanwhile, involved gathering sensitives from around the world to stay at Glen Cove while volunteering for experiments on the nature of their abilities. His staff built a set of copper-lined booths known as Faraday cages to block out radio waves and other electromagnetic interference to better isolate the potential psychic inside. One Camden resident, now 68 and preferring anonymity, recalls a trip to the Faraday cage while visiting Puharish's daughters. The scientist found the girls in the kitchen, she says, and invited them into the lab, where she remembers being ushered into a lightness booth, read a list of 5 words and asked to repeat them back. After a few minutes of this, the 7-year-old got scared. To tell you the truth, I didn't like being in the dark, so I said I have to go to the bathroom, and they let me out, and I heard him say to somebody else, "She's really not a good subject for this." My grandparents threw a fit when they found out. That facility was suspect for other reasons as well. Around 1958, Puharish was brought back into the military officially. He was reactivated officially to service with the Army. He went to Fort Ord in California, and he was doing chemical weapons testing, hallucinogen testing on the soldiers out there. When he moved out of the facility, that laboratory became the Glen Cove Bible School. And when the Bible school took over, the administrators at the school burned all of the Round Table's papers and artifacts, believing that they were occult works. They also sealed off a tunnel leading to the ocean, where the seminarian believed Puharish's Faraday cages were stored. So why did they leave behind all their psychic testing materials at the lab? Why did a Christian school, Bible school, take it over? Why did they burn all of it? And why were there underground tunnels under the fucking facility? So we're establishing that Puharish was interested in testing on children as young as 7 at his main facility in the 1950s. I have personally heard through friends of his that his testing was in full swing then, but he did move facilities to one in New York later that had an official program where he was testing on children on a wider scale. So when Puharish finished dosing soldiers on the West Coast for the Army, he came back and started up another lab, this time in Ossining, New York, at an estate that was bought for him by the guy that owns Belk department stores, because sure, that makes sense. It was at this facility around 1975 that Puharish started up his program for what he called Space Kids, or Star Children. Sound familiar? According to Puharish's biography, he went to Israel and he met with Israeli intelligence for some reason. He came back, went to Mexico, met 3 kids that had psychic ability, went back to New York, went back to Israel, and then came back to New York and had the 3 kids flown up where he proceeded to test on them. Apparently he had more than 3. He had 9 kids, according to him. He wrote a letter to his wife where he says, "I started an experimental school. The 9 space kids are all here, and Andy is living with them." Andy was his son. And when Andy's mom finally spoke to him, she said, "But Andy never told me what it meant to be a space kid until recently. If he had told me back then that each space kid was hypnotized in order to go back to his parent civilization, I would probably have flipped out and kept him home." She continues that, according to Andy, most of the kids present came from another planet. They had voluntarily returned to planet Earth to help in the raising of human consciousness. By being born as a human, they had to go through the same things that everybody had to go through, meaning that they could also get trapped by all the earthly distractions and forget about their true self. That's why Daddy set up the program, Andy told me, to remind those kids of their mission in life, or at least tell them why they are here and what their mission was. Now, did you catch that? These children had no recollection of being star children until Puharish hypnotized them and told them they were. Now, this is very familiar because when I told you about Puharish meeting Carla Ruckert had no idea what Ra was or who Ra was until Puharish hypnotized her, and then she all of a sudden started channeling him. Interesting how easy it is to implant a false memory, isn't it? And apparently this program with the kids lasted until the end of August, but all through 1975 and early 1976, young people from all over the world kept coming to the facility at Ossining. So this raises some disturbing possibilities. Puharish was put through the Army Specialized Training Program and medical school specifically to do warfare experimentation in hallucinogens, hypnosis, and psychic ability. So are the things that he implanted into popular society, such as Star Children and the raw material and the Nine and Egyptian channeling and all this wonderful shit, is this all just benevolent? Is this just the good-natured heart of good old Henry Puharish who wanted to help humanity? Or is this a decades-long warfare tactic that's meant to fuck us in the end?